Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the Healing series. This will be a series of testimonies wherein I will share my personal stories of tribulation and pain and the process of recovery that begins in finding my redemption in Jesus. For this episode, I'll be sharing yet another very personal and honest testimony about an issue a lot of people struggle with, and that's money. Money. Money is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, including me, but money, particularly the lack of it, has shaped my life significantly, and it indirectly created deep wounds in my heart as I was growing up. How exactly? Let me tell you my story. If you haven't watched episode 1 of the Healing series, I suggest you go watch that first. If you have watched episode 1, then you'll know that I came from a broken family. My parents separated when I was only 4 years old, and so I grew up supported by only one parent, and that was my mom. So I would say that for most of my life, we were somewhere in between low income and middle income. If I could describe that, I would say that we were able to afford all the basic things comfortably, but we couldn't afford to eat out a lot, to travel, and we were probably just one major hospitalization away from being broke or even being in debt. We could survive comfortably, but we weren't financially flexible. My mom was the only one who was working to provide for both of our needs. Plus, she was also financially supporting her parents and her siblings, and eventually she had another baby. So with all this responsibility in the shoulders of a single woman, it definitely was not easy. When I was still an only child, we were doing okay financially. I was able to study in a private school. I got all the toys and books and clothes that I wanted, even though my mom was the only breadwinner in the family. When my mom became pregnant of my little sister, she had to stop working at her long-time job, and we were being supported by my little sister's dad. And we were doing fine until they broke up while my mom was still jobless. I'm grateful to say that I personally have never starved because we didn't have money, but one of the most memorable moments when I felt the pangs of poverty was when I was in my early teens. In my early teenage years, we were renting an apartment that was very small, super tight space. Since my mom was jobless at the time, we had no income stream, so we were borrowing, I guess, from people that we knew. And I remember at least one time we were so out of money that we didn't have a meal to eat. We probably only had rice and we didn't have a meal to go with it. But thankfully we had a kind neighbor who gave us some meals to eat. But the rest of the time, I think we had a lot of instant noodles, sardines, and other cheap food options. Coming from a place of relative financial safety, we were plummeting into levels of bankruptcy that we've never been in before. So there was a lot of hardship in there, especially as the struggle went on for several months. In fact, our distressed financial condition led me to try out for a scholarship in high school. It was a very competitive nationwide entrance examination, and the stakes were high, especially because the tuition was free. My mom waited for me for hours while I was taking the test, and all she had to herself was a small pack of crackers to eat because we were broke, and it broke my heart to just see how much she was putting us first. One time we went to McDonald's after so long, and it was only me and my little sister who ate, and she didn't. So my mom really was always putting her children first. And so when I got the results of this entrance examination that I took and passed, I was so relieved. I was so grateful that I was going to relieve my mom of such a huge burden of my high school education. But spoiler alert for episode 3, choosing this high school cost me a lot, but in a different way. Subscribe to watch the next episode. Eventually, my mom was blessed to finally have a job after a long time of being unemployed. But the catch was she had to work abroad. My mom had a job opportunity to work overseas as a house helper. It's not the most glamorous job for someone who has a bachelor's degree, but a lot of you probably know how hard it is to look for a job, and at that time of sheer desperation and urgency, it was already a good deal. It was the only opportunity that was already standing before her. I admit, when I was younger, I kept my mom's occupation a secret. Sadly, I was too embarrassed to share to my peers, my classmates, majority of whom were well off, that my mom was a maid. And she has been for almost a decade now, or maybe even more. But now that I've grown up to be less naive and a little more sensible as a person, I can say that I am not in any way ashamed of my mom's job, which is a decent and difficult job, and I'm proud of her. I'm proud of her for enduring it through the years, especially the part where she has to be away from her loved ones, from us. Even though we had felt some relief when my mom started working abroad and I started studying with a scholarship, and even though my dad and my little sister's dad contributed financially every now and then, it was still not easy for us to make ends meet. My dad also has his own family to support. I have 4 half-siblings on his side. Eventually, there came a point where I had the biggest say in our financial future. If my mom's biggest financially driven decision was to work abroad, mine was choosing where I studied for college. In consideration of my family's financial conditions, I let go of the university that I wanted to study in. Instead, I chose to study in a university that offered me a full scholarship with monthly allowances and other benefits. This university was only my 3rd choice, and I almost didn't take the entrance exam to it because I was so sure that I wasn't going to this university anyway, but ironically I ended up studying there. I remember when I was deciding between my dream school and the university that offered me a scholarship, I said to myself, I cannot make a selfish decision. Whatever decision I make, it cannot be selfish. And so just then and there, without looking back, I decided to enter into this university, and I actually went alone. None of my other schoolmates went with me because most of them went to my dream school. And another spoiler alert, if you watch the next episode, you'll see how this made an impact on me negatively. So years go on, I finally finished college, then the pandemic happened, then after 2 years, I get my first job. So am I finally financially stable now? No, far from it. Most of my salary goes to my living expenses, which are quite high because I'm renting a place near my workplace and it's a business area, so the rates are quite high. But for now, let's end the storytelling part here and let's move on to the reflection part. So how exactly did I suffer from the impact of my family's financial conditions growing up? And why did I end up having some sort of financial bitterness? I'll try to sum it up. For a long time, the lack of money created a bitterness in my heart for 3 main reasons. First, I grew up without my mom. I always thought that maybe if we had enough money, my mom doesn't have to go work away from us overseas. It sucks because I miss her and I wish I had been able to spend my formative years with her by my side, guiding me. But the reason that my mom is working abroad up to this day is because we need money. So as much as it sucks to be away from my mom, we have to stay strong and to grow up on our own. It's a tough reality that I had to accept and to power through. Second, I ended up in places that I didn't really like because I chose the financially secure options from high school through college. The scholarships I got limited my options in university, and so I always thought that maybe if we had enough money, I would choose a different course. I would choose a bachelor's degree that I actually liked and enjoyed, and I wouldn't need a scholarship for it. Even in the jobs I can take, I feel restrained because of my educational choices. Also, I don't feel confident enough to explore my career options or even business options, since if I fail, I don't have a safety net. I don't have substantial financial support or backup if I fail. And lastly, I tend to envy my peers sometimes. Throughout my entire schooling, I've been surrounded mostly by peers who were well off, and so when I would look at their lifestyles, I would get a little sad and a little jealous because I didn't have what they have. One of my biggest I wish I hads in my life is that I wish I had, or we had, our own house. I never had a permanent address because we don't own a house in the city and we've always been just renting. Sometimes I also get sad whenever I ride my friends' cars or my friends' parents' cars because I don't have a car. But in all honesty, growing up with financial limitations was one of the best training grounds that God has laid out for me in my youth. Because the Lord, sovereign as He is, used what I lacked to give me greater gain. He turned what I saw as a curse into a blessing. Here's how. Number 1, God taught me how to be resourceful. Of course, when you're limited in resources, you're propelled to search for extra resources. So because we lacked money, I developed this mindset to constantly look for ways to earn and to save money. I learned how to manage my finances well. I trained myself to spend money wisely. And more than that, I became business-minded. During the pandemic, I turned my love for clothes into a business when I opened my own shop online. And I ran this for a year before I finally worked full-time corporate. And all my business stints enabled me to save and to somehow invest. Number 2, I am not a lover of money. By the grace of God, I did not grow up to be materialistic. I do not have any inclination to luxuries or material obsessions, and so I get to avoid unnecessary expenses and save more. This keeps me from being greedy. Also, I am easily contented and regularly appreciative of what I have. Money for me is very important, but it's not an idol. Money is not what gives me joy, and I praise God for that. Number 3, because I know how hard it is to earn and to save money and to budget money, I was able to appreciate and honor my parents more. I'm very grateful to my parents for all their hard work and sacrifices to provide for their children's needs and even wants. More than that, my mom and dad taught me real generosity. My parents are imperfect, but what I admire about them most is that they are very generous people in spite of not having plenty. Whenever they can, they give, even if it's hard, and they don't count what they give. I can wholeheartedly say that my parents' concrete examples of giving and helping others in need, despite their own needs and limitations, is their biggest inheritance to me as their eldest child. Number 4, through the times I felt or witnessed the pangs of poverty, God enabled me to empathize with the poor. I know and have been with people who are living in poorer conditions than what I experienced in my teenage years. Too many of my relatives are actually in what seems to be like a chronic financial struggle, and it's a truly horrible place to be in. I know a few relatives who have been depressed because of the problems caused by poverty. It's so hard, especially if you're raising children. The pressure never gets light for these people. But God's heart for the poor is most sincere. I got to feel God's heart for the poor through my own experiences and exposures. And it's painful. It's persistently frustrating. But God knows and shares their pain. All through the Bible, you can see that God's heart is for the poor. Number 5, through our financial lack, God showed His faithful provision. I tell you, God has never, not once, failed to provide for me and my family despite our struggles. God gave me my scholarships, my small business stints, and now my job. I personally, when I started earning and saving money, I never reached a point where I was broke. I always had enough. I had never been in debt. God always, without fail, makes ways to provide for my needs. And so I have built full confidence that God will always provide for me and that my future is secure in His good hands. And last but not least, number 6, God has made Himself known to me much more deeply. I relied on God more, not just financially, and so I grew closer to Him. God is sovereign. He is in total control. He turns curses into blessings. He gives us strength and endurance in our sufferings. He is with us in our sufferings, and with God, our sufferings are not suffered in vain. Just last night, very timely with this topic, my dad told me that he was feeling down, and so I called him. My dad told me that lately business has been doing really bad and it's already making him feel depressed. So I had an opportunity to be there for my dad, and I'm grateful to God because my dad was able to still acknowledge that despite his struggles, his current struggles, and the natural lows of life, his faith in God perseveres. And my dad even shared his realization that God must really love him because God was allowing these difficult financial conditions to make my dad rely on God even more. And I think God didn't let me finish filming yesterday because He wanted me to add this very recent anecdote which emphasizes the message of this video even further. In our financial struggles and in any other struggle in life, God calls us to rely on Him more and more. Being poor is not something to be romanticized. It's a complex byproduct of several micro and macro factors. Mostly human greed, if you ask me. But with this testimony, what I am saying is that if you are in a state of financial weakness, you can find redemption, not just financial redemption, in the sovereign, ever faithful, and deeply caring Father that we have in the one true God, the God of the Bible. On the other hand, if you're in a state of financial freedom, which is truly a blessing on its own, you must use it for good and not for evil. If you're a follower of Christ, you should know full well that money is not your master. You cannot serve both God and money. So even if money shapes certain circumstances in our life and influences a lot of the decisions that we make daily, we should not live as though we are enslaved by money. So this entails a life without excessive worries, excessive wants, and bitterness for the lack of money and everything that has done in your life. We must not sin because of money. No matter the circumstances, we must never put money above God. Money doesn't give you life. Meanwhile, God can both give you life and take it away from you anytime. Sometimes I find myself thanking God that even though we don't have a big income, commensurately we don't have big expenses either. I thank God that most of us in the family don't have sicknesses, we're still healthy, we don't have medical bills to pay, we don't have gambling addictions whatsoever, we're not in debt. God is protecting us. God's insurance is what I call it. So you see, God is in control. So if you've been struggling financially for a long time and this has brought you so much pain and discouragement in life, please remember that God is sovereign. He is in total control. He knows you, He knows your needs, He knows your limitations, and He cares for you. He will provide. He loves you passionately. God gave His only Son, Jesus Christ, for you, and in Jesus, you have hope beyond circumstances. So trust the Lord and don't lose heart. God sees you, He records your tears, He shares your pain, and He will redeem you. Stay close to Him and never stop praying. Whatever you do in life, as long as you align it with the will and plan of God, seeking Him faithfully, walking with Him steadfastly, trusting Him in everything, you will lack nothing and you will live life to the fullest. What can constrain you from living a full life is not money, but your faith. That's because you have eternal hope in Jesus Christ and true wealth in knowing Him and knowing God. So whether in plenty or in lack, with your faith and hope in the Lord Jesus Christ, live richly and give richly. So that is the end of the second episode of the healing series. I hope you were blessed. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and please do check out my other videos as well. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!